Emily wasn't expecting the evening to feel so alive. The lake house had always been a place of laughter and memories, but this time it felt different. The kitchen was warm with the smell of roasted vegetables, and chatter from the living room spilled in like background music. Emily moved quickly, preparing dishes for the group, when a spoon slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. She bent down to grab it, unaware that someone else was behind her. As she rose, she collided with a solid chest. Startled, she turned and found Ryan standing close, his hand halfway to the cabinet above. The sudden nearness left her breathless. He chuckled, trying to ease the moment, but his smile wasn't the easy one she remembered from childhood summers. There was a weight behind it, something steady that made her heart skip. For a second, the kitchen felt smaller, the air heavier. She caught herself staring into his eyes, realizing she hadn't really looked at him in years. Ryan had changed. He was older now, with a quiet confidence that filled the room without effort. The boy she once knew had grown into a man who carried himself with calm strength. Emily felt her cheeks warm as she stepped aside, giving him space, though a part of her wished she didn't have to. Their laughter faded, replaced by a silence that neither of them hurried to break. She clutched the spoon in her hand, aware of how fast her heart was beating. It wasn't just the accident. It was the way his presence unsettled her, stirring feelings she had long tucked away. Then, like a match striking the air, her best friend's voice rang from the living room. "Emily, are you almost done?" The sound snapped her back, pulling her out of the moment. She moved quickly to the counter, forcing her hands to stay busy. Pretending nothing unusual had happened, Ryan lingered for a second, as if he wanted to say something, but instead he reached up, grabbed a plate from the cabinet, and gave her a small nod. Emily avoided his eyes, though she felt them on her. She knew he had sensed the shift, too. It wasn't just her imagination. Something had passed between them, unspoken but undeniable. The evening went on as if nothing had happened. Friends gathered around the table, conversations flowed easily, and laughter filled the air. Emily joined in, smiling at the right moments, but her mind kept drifting back to that quiet second in the kitchen. Every glance she caught from Ryan across the table felt like a reminder, a gentle tug at her heart that she couldn't ignore. Later, when the night grew darker and the group moved outside to the fire pit, Emily wrapped herself in a blanket and watched the flames dance. Ryan sat across from her, his face glowing in the firelight, his eyes occasionally lifting to meet hers. Each time she looked away too quickly, afraid that others might notice. She didn't want questions. She didn't even know the answers herself. But as the night wore on, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in her life. A simple accident, a spoon slipping from her hand, had pulled her into a moment she would never forget. It was small, almost ordinary, yet it carried the weight of something much larger. She lay awake later that night in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. Every detail of the encounter replayed in her mind, the closeness, his voice, the look in his eyes. She tried to tell herself it was nothing, just two people bumping into each other in a crowded kitchen. But deep down, she knew better. That glance, that silence, had said more than words ever could. And though she didn't want to admit it, she found herself wondering what might happen next, because in that instant, as simple as it seemed, everything had started to change. The next day at the lake house felt light on the surface, but Emily carried a quiet storm inside her. She laughed with her friends during breakfast, helped clear plates, and even joined in a board game, yet her mind never left the memory of the night before. The closeness in the kitchen, the way Ryan had looked at her, it had unsettled something she thought was long buried. Every time she caught sight of him across the room, her chest tightened, as though her body already knew something her heart was still trying to deny. By evening, the house had settled into a calm rhythm. A few friends gathered around the television, others sprawled on couches with drinks in hand. Emily felt restless, so she slipped outside for air. The porch was quiet, bathed in silver moonlight, the lake stretching wide and still in front of her. She wrapped her arms around herself, taking in the crisp autumn air. That's when she noticed someone else was already there. Ryan leaned against the railing, his shoulders relaxed, his gaze fixed on the water. He didn't turn at first, but somehow Emily knew he was aware of her presence. She hesitated for a moment, debating whether to step back inside, but something made her stay. Quietly, she walked over and stood beside him. For a while, they didn't speak. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, meaningful, filled with everything they hadn't said over the years. Finally, Ryan broke it. "Do you remember the last summer we spent here before college?" Emily's breath caught. She remembered it vividly. The summer evenings stretched long, filled with laughter, swims in the lake, and late-night talks on this very porch. But she also remembered the night when Ryan had started to say something, then stopped, leaving her with questions she never dared to ask. "Yes," she answered softly. Her eyes stayed on the lake, afraid of what she might see if she looked at him. Ryan exhaled slowly, his voice low and steady. "I almost told you something back then. Something I've carried with me all these years." Emily's pulse quickened. She wanted to ask, but the words stuck in her throat. She already knew what he meant, and yet she wasn't ready to hear it. The porch, the lake, the silence, it all felt too much, too sharp, too close to the truth. When she finally turned her head, she found him watching her. His eyes weren't playful like they used to be. They were searching, full of a weight she didn't want to misread. For a moment, neither of them looked away. Emily's chest tightened with the unspoken pull between them. Just as Ryan opened his mouth to continue, the porch light flicked on. Emily's best friend, Sarah, stood at the doorway, hair messy from sleep, holding a blanket around her shoulders. "You two are still awake?" she asked casually, completely unaware of what she had interrupted. Emily's heart sank. Ryan straightened, forcing an easy smile. "Couldn't sleep?" he replied, his voice light but his eyes still locked on Emily's. Sarah shrugged. "Don't stay out too long, it's freezing." She disappeared back inside, leaving the door swinging slightly before it clicked shut. The moment was broken. Whatever Ryan had been about to say dissolved into the night. Emily let out a shaky breath, unsure whether to be relieved or disappointed. She wanted to know, but she also feared the truth. Ryan pushed away from the railing, his expression unreadable now. "You should get some rest," he said quietly. His voice was kind but guarded, as though he had pulled a wall back up between them. He gave her a small nod, then walked inside, leaving Emily standing alone under the moonlight. Her mind spun. She leaned against the railing, staring out at the lake, trying to calm her racing thoughts. That summer had haunted her for years, though she never admitted it to anyone. There had always been something unfinished between them, something left hanging in the air. And now, all these years later, the same silence pressed down on her again. Emily finally went inside, but sleep wouldn't come. She lay awake in the dark, remembering the boy who almost confessed something years ago, and the man who stood inches away from doing the same tonight. She wondered if fate was cruel, or if it was waiting for her to be brave enough to hear what she already knew. The house was quiet, everyone asleep, but Emily's heart refused to rest. She couldn't shake the look in Ryan's eyes, or the way his voice had carried weight when he spoke of the past. She didn't know what would happen tomorrow, but she knew one thing with certainty. Whatever he had wanted to say back then, he was still holding on to it now. The weekend moved faster than Emily wanted. One moment, the house was alive with voices. The next, it was quiet, bags half-packed and memories scattered across the rooms. She tried to enjoy the last day, but every time she saw Ryan, her chest tightened. She knew he hadn't forgotten the porch. She hadn't either. His unfinished words hung between them, waiting to be spoken. By late afternoon, most of the group had gone for a walk around the lake. Emily stayed behind, cleaning up the kitchen, wiping counters that were already spotless. She needed the distraction, but her mind kept drifting. She didn't hear the footsteps until Ryan entered. His presence filled the room instantly. She froze, the dish towel still in her hand. "Emily," he said softly, almost cautious. She turned, trying to mask her nerves, but his eyes caught hers and didn't let go. He looked determined, as though he had decided he couldn't leave things unsaid this time. "I can't keep pretending," he said. His tone wasn't heavy, just steady. I need to ask you something before we both walk away again. Her heart raced. She braced herself, though she already knew where this was going. Why did we spend all these years pretending there was nothing between us? His words landed like a weight, firm and unavoidable. Because I felt it then, and I feel it now. Emily's breath caught. The room seemed to shrink. She had waited years for him to say it, yet now that he had, she didn't know how to respond. Her voice cracked. She set the towel down, her hands trembling slightly. Maybe because I was scared. Scared of what would happen if we admitted it. Ryan stepped closer, slow but sure. His eyes searched hers, not pushing, just waiting. And now? Are you still afraid? Emily's chest tightened painfully. Every instinct told her to answer, to give him the truth she had kept hidden for years. But fear still clung to her. Fear of hurting her best friend. Fear of changing everything. Fear of being too late. Her lips parted, but no words came. Ryan's expression softened, but the intensity in his eyes remained. I just need to know, Emily. Are you going to keep running from this, or are you ready to stop? She wanted to say yes. She wanted to admit everything. But the weight of their history and the uncertainty of what came next pressed down on her. Before she could speak, her phone buzzed on the counter. Sarah's voice called from the hallway, cheerful and unaware. Emily, can you help me with the bags? The sound shattered the moment. Emily's breath hitched. She glanced at the phone, then back at Ryan. He didn't move. His jaw tightened, but he didn't step away either. The silence stretched. Finally, she whispered, I don't know. It was the only answer she could give. Ryan's face revealed a flicker of disappointment, but he didn't push. He nodded once, slowly, then stepped back. That's all I needed to hear, he said, though his voice carried both strength and sadness. Emily's heart ached as he turned and left the kitchen, leaving her standing in the middle of the room, torn apart by her own fear. She leaned against the counter, closing her eyes. The sound of bags being zipped and footsteps moving through the house filled the background, but all she could hear was Ryan's question echoing in her mind. Why did they pretend? Why had she let so many years slip by without saying what she truly felt? Her best friend entered the kitchen, smiling, arms full of jackets. Almost ready? Sarah asked brightly. Emily forced a smile. Yeah, almost, but inside she felt anything but ready. She had dodged the truth once again, and it hurt more than she imagined it would. As the evening settled and the house emptied further, Emily sat quietly by herself. The world outside was calm, the lake reflecting the fading light, but inside her, everything was unsettled. Ryan's words replayed again and again, louder than her fears, sharper than her doubts. She realized she couldn't keep avoiding the truth forever. Not with him. Not with herself, but for now the question remained unanswered. And the ache of that silence followed her into the night. The night after everyone packed up, the house felt strangely empty. Emily couldn't sleep. She tossed under the blanket, her heart restless, her mind replaying Ryan's words again and again. Why did we pretend? Are you still afraid? She hated herself for the way she froze, for giving him nothing but silence. She had waited years to hear him speak those words, and when he finally did, she let fear steal her voice. When the first light of dawn crept into the room, Emily gave up on sleep. She pulled on a sweater and slipped downstairs quietly. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. She expected to be alone, but when she reached the living room, she stopped. Ryan was there, sitting near the fireplace, a half-empty mug in his hand. His eyes lifted the moment she entered, as though he had been waiting for her. For a second, neither of them moved. Emily's heart thudded in her chest. She wanted to turn around, to escape the tension, but something stronger held her in place. She walked forward slowly, her steps echoing in the silence. Ryan set the mug down and stood. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he crossed the room with steady steps, his eyes never leaving hers. Emily felt her breath catch as he stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the faint tiredness in his face, the trace of hope still clinging to his expression. Emily, he said quietly, his voice firm but gentle. I can't keep this to myself anymore. I've waited too long and I don't want to waste another day pretending. Her throat tightened. She had imagined this moment for years, yet living it felt overwhelming. Ryan took a breath, his words clear and steady. I'm in love with you. I always have been. Back then, I was too young, too afraid to risk it. And when the years passed, I convinced myself it was too late. But every time I see you, I know it's not. Not for me. Not for us. Tears stung Emily's eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice faltered. She felt the weight of every choice she hadn't made, every silence she had let stand. For so long, she had buried her feelings, telling herself it was easier, safer. But in this moment, standing in front of him, she knew the truth. She shook her head, a tear slipping free. I should have told you too. All those years ago, I felt it, Ryan. I was just as scared as you. And last night, when you asked me if I was still afraid, the truth is I was. But I don't want to be anymore. Ryan's eyes softened, relief flickering across his face. He reached for her hand, slowly, as if giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their fingers intertwined naturally, like they had been meant to fit that way all along. Emily let out a shaky laugh through her tears. I can't believe it took us this long. Ryan smiled, and this time it wasn't guarded or hesitant. It was open, full of warmth. Maybe we just needed to find the right moment. The room was bathed in soft golden light now, the sun rising higher, filling the walls with a glow that felt like a blessing. Emily felt something inside her settle, as though the ache she had carried for years was finally healing. For the first time, she didn't feel fear. She felt peace. She felt chosen. She felt loved. They stood there, holding each other's gaze, hands clasped, the silence no longer heavy but comforting. Emily leaned into him, resting her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. His arm came around her, pulling her gently closer. Neither of them spoke for a while. They didn't need to. Everything that mattered had finally been said. When Emily pulled back, her eyes still wet, but her smile steady, she whispered, So, what happens now? Ryan brushed a thumb over her hand. Now we stop running. We stop pretending. We give ourselves the chance we should have taken years ago. Emily nodded, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. She believed him. She believed in them. The day stretched ahead, full of goodbyes and long drives back to separate lives, but Emily knew nothing would be the same anymore. The fear that had once held her was gone. She had chosen, and so had he. As the morning sun filled the lake house, Emily realized that the moment that changed everything hadn't been the accident in the kitchen or the silence on the porch. It was this: two people finally brave enough to stop hiding from the truth, and for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what came next.